This episode of the No Huddle Show is being brought to you by Chevrolet Cadillac of Turnersville, a Penske automotive dealer. Visit today at the Route 42 location in Turnersville, New Jersey, or online at ChevroletofTurnersville.com and CadillacofTurnersville.com.
What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here, NJ.com, here at Lincoln Financial Field with Mike Kaye for the latest episode of the No Huddle Show. Post-game podcast is finally going to be a positive one for the first time in what feels like since Nam, really. The Eagles won 25-22. All the things that there's a lot of things they've been struggling with that they did again, but they were able to come back this game. They haven't been shown really a capability of doing that. They closed out at the end. They ran the ball. They won 25-22. They're back in the mix. They're a game out, and they have two NFC East games coming up these next 2 weeks. We're pretty much going to find out if they're maybe not going to win the division, but if they're a legit threat to.
Yeah, I think this looked like a colossal collective failure.
Colossal Collective. I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
Sounds like a band or of some sort.
Yeah, it's a hair band from the 80s. This was a mess in the first quarter and a half. And that's putting it lightly.
I mean, we pretty much called the season everybody kind of did. They looked really bad.
It looked really bad. It was actually one of their worst starts of the season. And then, it just kind of clicked. There was, at one point, I tweeted out that this is in the middle of the second half is when the second quarter is when the Eagles typically catch fire for a couple of minutes. They produced a field goal, which was kind of questionable to go. It was 4th and 3 at I believe the Giants' 24-yard line. They could have gone for it. They were down 9-0 or 12-0, excuse me. And I just thought, maybe they should have been a little bit more, they should have gone for the gamble, I thought, early on, but it turned out that it actually worked out.
Oh, you're talking about when he didn't go for it on 4th and 3?
Right, yeah.
He still should have went for it, whether or not it worked out or not.
Right. Well, that said, Jake Elliott makes the field goal. It comes off of a big gain from Cory Clemente, who actually looked great for the first time this season.
I mean, Josh Adams is the bigger
right, he is. We'll get
story of that, but yeah, we'll talk about him a lot. Yeah,
we're going to talk about him a lot.
But yeah, you're right. Cory Clemente's best games is the Super Bowl, really.
Right, and so you think that they're about to build some momentum. The Giants go back down and score a touchdown. So it's 19-3. It's a 16-point hole. You're like, well, can the Eagles come back from this? Carson Wentz orchestrates a terrific drive, throws a touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. You're feeling some momentum. But the momentum really didn't turn around until what Malcolm Jenkins did on the follow-up drive, the last drive of the second quarter. Jenkins had a forced fumble that went out of bounds, and he was frustrated with himself that he didn't force the fumble while everybody was in bounds and could have gotten the ball back. 2 plays later, he picks off Eli Manning towards, I think it was this 2-yard line.
Yeah, it was right in the middle of the field, and we've talked about their inability to force turnovers this season. That was the team's first since the last Giants game when Camus Grugier Hill had an interception on Eli, and that was Jenkins' first in almost exactly a year. He got his last interception against the Bears last year on the 26th, I believe. So it's kind of crazy, but I mean that pretty clear that you went into the locker room. They were feeling a little better about themselves. They came out. I think they outscored the Giants 14-3 in the second half. Mm-hmm. And that was largely because they were running the ball. They committed to running the ball. It wasn't just – this was the first game of the season they had more rushing attempts than pass attempts. Yeah. It was 29-28. And Josh Adams, I mean, we can get into the specifics in a bit, but he had 22 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. He had one – on the first drive, actually, he had a 51-yard touchdown run called back by a holding call. And after that, you're like, uh-oh, they might not get that chance again.
Yeah, you can't always take advantage of those opportunities, I guess. Jason Kelce had the holding call. But, yeah, Malcolm Jenkins allowed this team to go into halftime with the momentum. He took away points from the Giants. And really, the Giants never bounced back from that. It really was a case of Jenkins providing that one spark to just ignite the flame for this team. And I think maybe you can take this away as the first of many. I mean, we haven't seen the Eagles win 2 straight games, but it does feel like they have a lot of momentum heading into Week 13.
I will say you definitely leave feeling better than you did a week ago, but they also came out flat against a bad Giants team. They didn't look very good for the entire first half. Really, at the end of the first half, they picked it up. I mean, Carson Wentz was good. He completed most of his passes. He wasn't amazing.
I mean,
he was good he was clutch. Which the biggest question mark he's had was that he wasn't clutch. The Eagles committed to the running game. If they do that the rest of the way, and Josh Adams is as good as he looks, you can feel good about themselves. But as I've said, until they show us that they can win 2 games in a row and they can put together 2 straight weeks of good performances, I mean, the Redskins are banged up. They're vulnerable. The Eagles should be taking advantage of that next week. But I still think it's not 100% in the clear after this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
they killed the Giants the last time they won, and look what happened after that.
I think there's room to still kind of have that negative feeling, right? Because it wasn't like a miraculous, like, hey, they beat the bricks off these bros.
I mean, yeah, and you have to factor in the Giants had some strange play calling tendencies in that second half. They didn't give the ball to Saquon Barkley. I mean,
they lost Evan Ingram before the game.
Rhett Ellison looked like the next coming of Tony Gonzalez in the first half.
Right. I mean, so again, this is one where you kind of feel like meh. I mean,
they need wins, and wins are wins to them.
Right, wins are wins to them. I think from an outside perspective, we're going to be a little bit more guarded because we've seen this before. But for the team, hopefully this is something they can build on. I think I saw a quote from somebody that said Doug Peterson said the Eagles were jazzed after they won that game.
He did say that, yeah.
Wow.
He also threw a couple trust the processes in his press conference. He said that was his message to the team last night, which is a nice shout out to Sixers fans, which they've been saying for years. I had one guy tweet at me that Sam Hinkie saved the Eagles, which is a pretty great tweet.
Hey, look, it's a group effort. It takes a village, which I've heard the term used.
Football coaches say that a million times.
But I feel like because we're expecting a baby in January.
We are?
Well, no.
Mike, you didn't tell me.
Oh, whoa, whoops. Sorry, I'm used to talking about my wife like that. So anyway, my wife and I are expecting in January, and I have heard it takes a village at least 12 times in the last
if one more person says that to me, right. I swear.
But in this case, I mean, it's true. It took the entire group to kind of spearhead this win. Now, the Eagles still need a convincing win. If they come in here...
Yeah, they haven't had one this year.
This is their only back-to-back homestand, where next week they play the Redskins in prime time. The Redskins are reeling. You need to come into this game...
Hit them in the mouth. Yeah.
Beat the bricks. Like, this has to be... Like, you remember when... there was that game with Michael Vick, I think it was week 1, where, or maybe it was week 2, where they just threw it...
Against the Redskins, yeah.
Yeah, where they just...
Yeah, that was the game he had a ridiculous stat line or whatever, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. He had a perfect game. He threw it to Deshaun on the first...
Carson can use that as much as anybody. He needs, his dominant game.
Right, and I think when you look at guys like Zack Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey, their box scores aren't, going to blow you away. But some of the plays they made in that game, those two guys are not yak receivers. And they were able to, fight for extra yardage. It looked like there was urgency here. That, I think, is the biggest takeaway from this game, is that...
In the second half, at least, yeah.
Guys were fighting. Guys wanted to win. Guys wanted to prolong this season. I thought the offensive line really settled in towards the middle of the third quarter when they were running the ball just consistently. Josh Adams, to me, is the find for the offense of this season for the Eagles. And you and I have been beating this drum. I mean, we'll talk about it more when we do position-by-position breakdowns. But Josh Adams is the story here.
Let's jump into that. Let's talk about the running backs. That he had that play where that was called back. It pretty clearly was a hold. He probably wouldn't have gotten that if Kelsey didn't hold that guy. But he showed some bursts, and that's the biggest surprise. I think he's faster than any of us realized. And he got banged up a little bit, and he came out. He was in the medical tent. He wound up coming back. He didn't really play that much the rest of the half. Clemente started getting more carries, and you maybe started, oh, dang, are they going to get away from giving him the ball again? And then the second half, those last couple drives, I kind of want to pull it up right here. The amount of carries he had at the end, he's the LeGarrette Blount. This is what we talked about. He's your clock drainer. He's your, if we need a big play, we go to him. On the scoring drive where they took the initial lead 22-19, where he had a touchdown, the drive started with, it started with Josh Adams running it. They went to Clement and Adams on every play of the drive, and it was a 7-play drive, and Adams had, I believe, 5 carries for 30 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. Like, that was when clearly Doug, like, changed his mindset. It was, all right, Josh Adams is working better than the passing game is. So
and he has for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, he has, but Adams didn't have more than 10 carries. He had 22 today, and then on that last drive, let's see, Adams ran it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in 10 plays, half the play. Oh, I guess 5 and 9 plays, and they got a field goal out of it that won the game.
He's the closer. That's the guy that they've needed. They were able to close out this game and score that final field goal because they rode Josh Adams. We talked about it in the press box. This is what they need to do. You can't just survive by throwing the ball 40 times a game. Carson Wentz, as great as he is, has shown that he is not going to carry this team on his back in certain situations. That's fine. You can still be a great quarterback by not having to just throw your entire talent weight at another team. Not everyone can do that. They needed a complement for the passing game. Josh Adams is that guy. But the guy I really want to talk about is Cory Clemente. Cory Clemente is a guy who brings a lot of energy to this offense. He's a very confident guy. Really good pass catcher. He was supposed to be the guy that allowed the Eagles to forget about Sproles when Sproles went down with that hamstring injury in week 1 and it never happened. Now I think you have this guy who can be a change of pace back. If the two of them are playing the way that they are long term, I think this running back group is really strong. And I think the Eagles are in a really good place moving forward. If they can start out the way that they did in the second half against the Redskins are in trouble. And so is Dallas, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, Clement, we've talked quite a bit about how he was somewhat of a disappointment, the way they used him and the way he was performing. I mean, he had a couple catches. He had that 32-yard run, which is the longest run they've had this season now. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I mean, it makes you think, like, you have Adams and Clement for the future now, and maybe you add in a rookie in the draft, or you sign a guy who can be another change of pace, like a speed guy or a short, like something like we've talked about. That you have the 3 different kinds, and I think you feel, especially with Josh Adams being like an RB1, like he legit looks like you can build the offense around him almost.
He looks like
he's gotten better as a pass catcher, like, and that was he's pretty decent in protection, which is impressive for an undrafted rookie. Like, it's just one of those things, like, one of those what ifs, like, what if somebody claimed him when they cut him? Like,
right.
Like, yeah, they wouldn't be where they are right now without him. Like, he's legit been their offensive MVP. At least this week he was.
Yeah, and I think, it speaks a lot to Wendell Smallwood. He's gone from being a guy that they relied on quite heavily to not getting a snap, or not getting a carry in this game. And
yeah, it just makes, I know they were still trying to get Adams ready, but, like, it just shines a light on the fact that they rode the Wendell Smallwood train a little too long.
I mean, yes, that's accurate.
All right, we can move on from running backs.
Yeah, I want to get to the tight ends.
All right, so one of the other, beyond the Golden Tate stuff, which we'll get into, one of the big things was, like, they weren't getting Golden Tate the ball, they weren't getting Dallas Goedert the ball. I think he had one. I don't even know if he had one catch in the last, like, 3 weeks before today, and they targeted him pretty quickly. He had a couple of good plays. He was getting yards after the catch. Three catches on 4 targets for 33 yards. I mean, he just adds another dimension to this offense. And Doug admitted to the media this week that, like, we just, I mean, they've said it all year, so we were like, all right, we'll believe it when we see it. Like, they finally started playing him more. They play with 12 personnel a lot, and they just weren't targeting him. And it opens things up for Zach Ertz. It makes things easier. It makes Nelson Aguilar able to make the play that he made later in the game. And I just think he just had, like, you drafted that guy in the second round. You traded up to get him for, like, games like this, and they finally used him. And I mean, doesn't like jump off the stat sheet, but he's a presence.
So there was a key 2-game sequence. Two play sequence in this game that I thought was a what? Oh, okay. There was a key sequence in the I believe it was the third quarter of the game where the Giants sent Alec Ogletree on a blitz, and Goddard completely missed the blitz pickup, and Ertz was sacked.
Ertz was sacked.
Dude, this cold is killing me. Wentz was sacked. The very next play, Wentz went immediately to Goddard on a passing play, and Goddard made a very impressive one-handed catch. I spoke to Wentz after the game and asked him, how important is it that these guys are stepping up and forgetting bad plays and then moving on and having good ones? And he said just overall these rookies, and Goddard especially, are able to really kind of compartmentalize mistakes and then achieve success after that. And that's like a big plus for this team moving forward, because they know they can rely on guys because they won't be shell-shocked by their mistakes. And I think that's a big deal for Goddard, especially just because they did invest a high pick on him, and Zack Ertz playing so well at the tight end position. I think tight end's the strength of this offense by a pretty large margin.
Might even be the strength of this team, honestly. Like, it might be the most talented position they have.
Yeah, I mean, when you factor in the injuries, absolutely. And then, from there, you look at the wide receivers. They didn't really spread the ball around wide receivers all that frequently.
So they ran the ball more. It was like more of a power attack today, when that includes going to the tight ends. Yeah.
Which we've been saying, 12 personnel, running the ball out of 12 personnel and passing to tight ends is the key to winning for the Eagles. Alshon Jeffrey, Golden Tate, they were targeted quite frequently. But Jordan Matthews and Nelson Aguilar combined for one catch for 12 yards. Now, the
on
one
two
catch
targets
that Nelson Aguilar
was maybe the most important one of the game.
Right.
Doug went for it on fourth down. They were like in the 30s or 40s, I forget exactly. And that they got it. Was that the one? Yeah, that led to the field goal, right?
Right.
Yeah, it led to the field goal. But let's talk about Golden Tate a little bit.
Sure.
So the big storyline, one of the many big storylines this week was, Mike Gross comments about how we're struggling to. It was almost like we're struggling to integrate him into the offense. It was almost like he saw the reaction to it, and they decided to immediately go after Golden Tate to the point where the plays weren't good play calls. It was third and long, and they did a screen pass to Golden Tate, and he had nowhere to go. They targeted him 8 times total, which tied for Zack Ertz leading the team. None of them were very impactful. He had a really good catch that wasn't very well thrown ball from Carson Wentz. I think it was for 12 yards.
Yeah.
But he also had a drop, and he also kind of fumbled a punt return, but it didn't wind up hurting them. But he didn't really make an impact on this game.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. They very clearly needed a deep threat, and they thought since they couldn't find value for the deep threat on the trade deadline, that a sturdy catch everything yards after the catch guy was necessary. Clearly not. He has not impacted the offense one bit.
Yeah, there's still time, but right now, I would say the trade was a mistake. If we're grading it right now,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe the playoffs would be where it pays dividends in theory.
But you got to get to the playoffs.
But you got to get to the playoffs, and he's not someone who's really proven that he's going to be helping them do that.
He's been a non-factor, and I think,
and he's affected Nelson Aguilar.
Right, and I think they forced the ball to him a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody turned him.
It was like a response to everything they had said this week.
Right. Somebody said to me the other day, he was the most targeted guy. He had the most catches against New Orleans. Well, yeah, that was in garbage time. And then they go out here, and it's like they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. They'd rather see Golden Tate do well than their team do well. It's
like trying to prove their point about the trade or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, just because you get him involved quite often doesn't mean you're using him properly.
Yeah.
Let's. The narrative is that he does not have a place in the offense. Cool. He's catching a lot of passes, but what is he actually doing for the offense? And I think that's the thing that we need to be talking about. It's just not. It hasn't been a good look, and I agree with you. It's not looking like a good trade. Now let's talk about the offensive line. First half, not so great.
Here, I'll pull. I think most of this came in the first half, but the Giants had 3 sacks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterback hits.
Yeah, and a lot of that came in the first half.
And he was getting rushed, and there were sometimes where he was holding on to the ball too long. Sometimes guys weren't open. But yeah, it didn't look good.
Yeah, and so I think they eventually settled down once Brandon Brooks got back in the game.
And once the rushing attack started working.
Right. That's the thing. That shows you what the running game can do, not only for the running backs in the passing game, but just the overall offensive line. I spoke to Lane Johnson after the game. He said that it felt like it was the first time they actually did what they talk about during the week. That's kind of alarming, but when you put it all together, look at the success they're having. And I think if they can come out and run the ball over a depleted Redskins defense, that's going to help them moving forward. I know we keep talking about looking ahead and stuff like that, but the perspective of this win is, how can a win like this carry over to the next game? Because really, this game was kind of meh. I mean, yeah, it was a great comeback.
They still only scored. 25 is the best they've. It's the only second time they've scored more than 24, and both have been against the Giants.
Right.
Yeah, they have to play well against somebody that's not named the New York Giants. Is what it comes down to.
Correct, and I think.
And they won't play them anymore. So.
Right. I think this is a big opportunity coming into Week 13 to really establish yourself. You need to win the back-to-back games. Now they're 3-3 at home. This is the final stretch. It's the final countdown.
The final countdown.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying. See, he knows that song, but he hasn't seen the movie Tombstone. Make sure that you critique him in the comments section for not seeing Tombstone. Moving on from that, the defensive line, they were able to get pressure towards the start of the second half. Michael Bennett, what a trade that was. That is like the one...
It looks better and better each week.
Yeah, he's the one guy that they really acquired non-draft-wise that has worked out.
He went down in the first half, and you started getting a little worried because they don't really have the depth there that they used to.
Right.
He ended up coming back. He had a sack this game. Fletcher Cox had 3 quarterback hits. He was wrecking havoc. Chris Long had a sack. They're pressuring Eli Manning quite a bit, which is kind of their goal coming into this game.
Right.
Jim Schwartz a bit. I thought maybe they didn't blitz quite as much as I thought they would, but the defensive line, like the back end, needed that. Like you weren't, no matter what happened this game, you weren't going to blame the cornerbacks because these are guys that have no business playing in this game.
Certainly.
And I think because you saw them getting more comfortable in the second half, and they played pretty well relative to expectations, especially LeBlanc. Once the defensive line started like getting into their groove, and I think it all starts there. And maybe they haven't received the criticism they deserve this season. But Tim Jernigan, he I don't know how many snaps he played. It was probably on the low end, but he was involved on the very first play. There was a tackle for loss, and he was a big part of it.
Yeah, I think Tim Jernigan is a guy who it's not just about what he brings to the box score, and
it's his presence.
I don't mean to be like that, guy that speaks in
coach speak.
Yeah, coach speak, but like. It's very clear he's a guy that's thought of very highly in that locker room. He's a guy... I saw him getting hyped on the sideline, and he looked like Brian Dawkins talking to himself and getting hyped.
Him and Michael Bennett were feeling it today. They were like dancing and stuff, yeah.
Well, and I think those are two guys that the line can feed off of with the energy boost, because all the other guys are pretty, like, steady dudes. They just really don't bring a lot of energy, and I think... it helped Brandon Graham towards the end of the second half. I talked to Jernigan after the game. He said that his knee, or his ankle and his back that were injured last season and earlier this offseason, he said that he was feeling great. He's happy to be out there with his teammates. So overall, I think this was a good first effort from Jernigan. You look at the linebackers, yikes for most of the game.
Yeah.
Camus had some pretty decent plays.
Yeah, he had 2 tackles for loss, but yeah, Rhett Ellison got what he got because of linebackers.
Right, yeah, he did well. I thought Saquon did really good as a receiver as well.
Yeah, when they were throwing it to him,
yeah.
The first half, I thought he was going to get 300 yards this game. Like, he was destroying them.
Yeah, he was killing them. And then you look at the corners, like you said. I
think you have to do it on a curve. I think it has to be relative to expectations.
I gave them a D because I can't give them a curve on the grading.
Yeah, but just like in reaction to it, like the first half they were bad. Like there's no question about it. Shandon Sullivan was getting targeted. He wound up getting hurt.
Yeah.
Can't remember. We can't remember if he went back in the game. I don't think he did.
I don't even think they announced the injury.
Yeah. That shows you what they think about him. But tough day for him to it's his first ever start.
Yeah,
he had to go against Beckham, and he gave up a lot of stuff, and then he got hurt.
Bosby had the
Bosby got beat a couple times. All 3 of them had trouble. They in particular had trouble tackling, but the corners besides Jalen Mills have been bad at tackling this season for the most part.
If anything, this shows you how important Jalen Mills is.
Well, and then LeBlanc, to his credit, he made one of the most important plays of the game. You could debate whether it was interference or not. I didn't really think it was. I thought
based
he was going
on how
for the
they
ball.
were calling the game, I didn't think.
Yeah, but he was 1-on-1 with Odell Beckham. Like, it's a scary thought that they let that happen. Anyway, 1-on-1. The Giants were at the 11-yard line. Eli targeted him, of course, and LeBlanc made a great play on the ball. Whether it was interference or not, you you don't let Beckham get the touchdown. So it's a good play, even if it was interference.
Yeah, they called 5 or 6 push-offs.
So for LeBlanc to be in that situation, he clearly has some confidence to him. He had some great quotes after. He's like, Odell's always calling for flags, and he's like, I ain't scared of no man.
Yeah,
he's a guy that the city of Philly's going to like if he becomes a player for them.
Yeah, he said, I put my pants on the same way that he does. I thought that was great.
But yeah, I mean, if those guys can be average, then their defense will be fine.
Well, I think Jalen Mills,
he should be coming back soon.
He might be back next week. It's looking more likely.
The Redskins have pretty bad receiving group, but
yeah, I mean, and I think the run defense shows you how important Jalen Mills is to that, because he is a very good run defender, and he's gritty and all those other coach terms. Let's talk about safety. Corey Graham was his normal disaster.
He got hurt at one point. I think he went right back. DeAndre Hall got it. We all kind of joked because they got him and it felt like he didn't exist. He played one play. They pulled him out. I turned to somebody. I'm like, I'm going to write an oral history about that play.
Yeah, you should.
Nothing happened with him. I think he was like around the ball actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, Corey Graham was.
It was a red zone play too.
Yeah. Corey Graham has no business starting in the NFL. That's just the reality. Maybe not even playing in the NFL at this point. But Malcolm, he said what he said this week, and he backed up his words with action. For what he said this week, clearly rubbed some people the wrong way. I think they lashed it out. I'm sure Doug talked about how the leaders all met on Saturday. I don't think anybody holds ill will in this locker room. They have good heads on their shoulders. I don't think, even with those comments, I don't think anybody was concerned about the direction necessarily. Maybe if tonight had gone differently, it would have. But he's the leader. He almost made a forced fumble. He got the interception, and in the end, that. It's plays like that, or you look back at the Minnesota Vikings NFC Championship, the Patrick Robinson's pick six. I know they blew them out, but maybe it goes a lot differently if that doesn't happen. Turnovers make a huge deal, especially if it leads to something.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that the secondary had to feed off of. They had to listen to because they were so inexperienced, and he's been the lone constant there. He's the lone remaining Week 1 starter, and frankly, I think he's the best defensive player on this team at this point. I mean, Fletcher's been terrific, but he's also hasn't been Fletcher of old. I think you could say goodbye to that Defensive Player of the Year award.
Yeah, that was that's a pipe dream. I mean, Jenkins, he had played slot cornerback quite a bit tonight. We've talked we haven't talked as much because he's had to stick to safety in recent weeks. But this is a dude who will play linebacker, he'll play safety, he'll play slot cornerback, and doesn't miss a beat. And he doesn't get enough credit for all the things he does for this defense.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Swiss Army knife when it comes to this defense, and I think literally every position group, whether it was offense or defense, said something about Jenkins' interception. So,
dying over there.
Sorry, you guys have to hear that.
If they make it to the playoffs, you might not make it that long.
I don't know. I don't know what the diagnosis is. But, somebody who we have to really talk about, and I know you're planning on featuring him soon, is Jake Elliott.
Yes.
He's
back.
He is back. He's a guy that I think they needed to get back, as it were. He's put together a string of pretty good games, looking pretty good. What do you got? What's that?
He didn't attempt any field goals against the Saints, obviously.
Right.
But excluding the Saints game, over the last 4 games, he's 6 of 6 on field goals. And he made a game winner today.
Is that including the Giants game?
It's not including. I added the Giants game.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's 6 of 6. He made, what was his long tonight? Don't remember what his long was. I don't know if any of his kicks were that long, but the point being, he made clutch field goals.
The 43-yarder.
His big thing last year was how he made the 61-yarder last year.
Yeah.
He even admitted he thought about it when the initial drive was coming. He said it's kind of funny how it's coming down to the same thing again. This one was a little closer for him. The Eagles they worked the clock, they rushed the ball, they gave him position, he made it. It seems like he's calmed down because earlier this year he was missing field goals he was making last year, mostly longer ones. He hasn't been as good from long range. He hasn't had to do that as much recently. I think he made a 40-something a couple weeks ago. But yeah, he's been stellar. And then your boy Cameron Johnson.
Oh man, yeah, he's pinning them back.
Average 50 yards a punt, 2 inside the 20. We talked a lot about how he gets it in the 20, but maybe it's not placed very well. Yeah. It was today, and there was one that was if the guy had got there a little quicker, it would have down at the one, but that one was a tough one. Angle. Yeah, but you can't be mad about either of them. And Cory Clemente had a good. I think he had one good return, right?
Yeah,
26 yards.
Yeah, so.
Golden Tate had that mishap on punts, and maybe Darren Sproles will exist again this season. I don't know. We both aren't confident in that.
I don't know. He returns against Washington.
Do they keep using Golden Tate back there, you think?
No, not. If Sproles returns.
I'm removing Sproles.
Who else are you going to put back?
Yeah,
there?
True. Clement, I don't know.
LeBlanc. I don't know. I think overall this team has to feel good about where it is right now. How do you feel about going into the Washington game? I mean, we'll get more into it during the week, but how do you feel?
It's like such a weird game to like look at because on the one hand, Eagles coming off a win, Redskins completely banged up. Their game didn't wind up being particularly close against the Cowboys, right?
Which
on Thanksgiving,
Washington. It didn't. It was closer than it actually.
Yeah. Than the final score was, but they should win that game. Like, they're going to be favored. Maybe by like a touchdown, honestly. If the Eagles can get some guys back, like if they get that win, then I'll be back in on not on like them doing and making any noise in the playoffs. I still don't think they quite have the juice for that. But all you have to do is get there, and if they win next week, I think they're probably going to win the NFC East.
Well,
the Cowboys are maybe a little tougher than they looked before that first game. Like Amari Cooper, they've worked him in. Dak Prescott's playing better. I should say they'll be in better position, certainly. Then you go to Dallas, and that game might decide the division in the end.
Right, and I think if Jalen Mills is back, if you have Darren Sproles, if you have Sidney Jones, if you have Rasul Douglas,
Vontae Maddox,
like by week 14, then you're
maybe Mike Wallace at some point. I don't know.
Oh yeah, hey, I mean there you go. Come on down. I mean he is eligible to return.
Shelton Gibson doesn't. He's another MIA guy who doesn't exist around here anymore.
Yeah, poor guy. But again,
yeah,
I think when you look at how a lot of this stuff's playing out, you have this game at home against the Redskins. And then, from there, you are going to the Cowboys, which isn't really a home field advantage for them, just based on how the Eagles travel, because there will be a lot of Eagles fans there. I think you're in a really good spot, and then you head to Los Angeles in Week 15, where you're probably going to get slaughtered, and that's expected. And if you can come out with something positive from that, that's terrific. And then you come back and you face a really tough Texans team, and if
Redskins on the road.
And the Redskins on the road, so...
I mean, we might be back at the Week 17 mattering again, but again, they have to show more than they did today, honestly.
Right, and you know what? Hopefully, you break the Redskins' will by beating them on Monday Night Football.
And early, I want to see them come out in the first quarter and score on their first possession.
Right, if you can get up 24 to
even if it's a field goal, they have to score in the first enough. They can't keep having these first quarters where they just don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean
they have 21 points. They've been stuck on 21 points for the season for 3 or 4 weeks. I forget I think it's 51-21 in the first quarter. They've been shut out in the first quarter 9 of 11 games.
That's crazy.
And I think one of them was against the Giants when they killed them. So it's just that's one thing that that's on the coaching staff more than anybody. And yeah, I think that's going to be something. Well, I mean, today it looked like they were going to lose after they started off slowly, so maybe that won't be the decider. But I mean, if they can come out and just kill the Redskins, then all of a sudden you're feeling better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? And how about this? You and I, our first year on the beat, we are undefeated against our NJ.com rivals/coworkers. 2-0.
Bad in every other way, pretty much.
Yeah, well,
record-wise.
That's how it goes.
That's how it goes.
So that's a good note to close on. Give them your spiel.
Give them a spiel. Yeah, we're on, as you guys know, we're on all the podcast apps. Subscribe, leave us comments. We'll read them all this week. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you soon.
This episode of the No Huddle Show is brought to you by Chevrolet Cadillac of Turnersville, a Penske automotive dealer. Visit today at the Route 42 location in Turnersville, New Jersey, or online at ChevroletofTurnersville.com and CadillacofTurnersville.com.